What is up guys, my name is Ben, welcome to the channel, and today's video is going to be a tutorial on starting out in Photoshop. This is the first video in the tutorial series where I'm going to be talking about using Photoshop. Specifically, I will be doing other programs eventually, and I'm just going to go through what I use most of all, what kind of things I like to do in Photoshop and how I do them, and hopefully you guys can learn some things and hopefully you can adapt this to your own styles. Today's video is talking about the interface, the basic kind of thing you're greeted with when you go into Photoshop, and next video will be things like selection and moving tools. So let's just get straight into it. Right, so as you can see here, we have just opened Photoshop, and this is what you'll be greeted with, your page on Photoshop CC. This is the most recent version of Photoshop. If you haven't got the most recent version, it'll be very similar to this, but I'm going to be using the recent version. So first of all, what you'll be seeing on here is new and open. Now we're going to do a new document, and if you look here, I've got all my recent document sizes. I've got saved ones that I've saved. You got photo. So these are all like landscapes. You can get templates from down here. I've got print, which is letters and tabloids and A4. Art and illustration, which is pixel grids and posters and postcards. You got web, which is all your web most common things. You got mobile, which is, you know, the most used mobile phones, and film and video. For things like YouTube videos and layouts and stuff that go like overlays, go with this one, because this is the default HD size. If you're doing something for a HD video, use this as your guideline. If you're doing something in general, I just recommend either going for photo and just go for default Photoshop size, or just go for print and go for A4. Another one is using things like 4x6, 5x7. That's for things like photos, landscapes, or if you want to do portraits, you use 4x6. 5x7 portrait. Now over here is various different tools you'll see. So preset details, this will be the name of your document, so you call it document 1. Now over here you've got your width in whatever this is, whatever units this is, your height in whatever units that is. You've got your orientation, so landscape and portrait, which is quite self-explanatory, it just switches these over. In units, you've got pixels, which I tend to work with. You've got inches, which is great for photos because usually they're specified in inches. You've got centimeters, in case you've measured to centimeters, you know, like a poster board. You've got millimeters, which is for specifics. You've got points, which is similar to pixels, except it uses points from, I think it's Illustrator. It's a mathematical format, which I don't tend to use, but you can use it if you'd like. It doesn't really, you know, it's not great. I'd rather use pixels, but it works just as well. And then you got picas, which is similar to pixels, but it's weird because it's like divided by 1,000 and then times by like 200 or something like that. So it's a strange format. I just stick to pixels, inches, or centimeters. I normally do pixels. Resolution, if you're doing print work, you want to focus on 300, 600, or 1200 pixels per inch, and that's DPI. That's your resolution. It's hard to explain what it kind of is, but essentially it's what you use and it's the quality of the image. Web work, use 72. You don't need to go higher than 72. Screens cannot really show like higher than 72. It doesn't make a difference essentially. Now your color mode down here, you've got bitmap, which is like pixel work. You've got grayscale, which is essentially black, white, and grey. You got RGB color, which is your screen colors, and then you've got CYMK color, which is essentially your printing colors. So if you're working on mostly print, use this one. If you're working in screen work, use RGB. If you're keeping it on the internet and stuff, use RGB. If you're using other things, lab color, I'm not really sure what that is. It's kind of different, but you don't need to use it that often, so I wouldn't worry about it as a beginner. On the right here of this, you've got 8-bit, 16-bit, and on RGB, you have 32-bit. Now this just depends on the kind of quality you're wanting to go for, so I suggest just sticking to 8-bit, that works fine. 16-bit occasionally if you really want that crispness. I work in 8-bit most of the time. Down here you've got background content, so that's basically what color your background's going to be. You can change this to anything on here. I work with white, that works fine. It's a good base, it contrasts with the backgrounds around it, like the tools and stuff. works like a charm. Advanced options, don't worry about this too much. I use sRGB, so it's like with my monitor, it works well with my monitor. It creates as crisp as possible, as close to the color as possible. You can do don't color manage, or you can do that. Square pixels, you want to keep it square pixels, don't change it. Anamorphic, that sort of thing, that's only if you're working on different projects. But I suggest keeping those advanced options still like that, just keep them down there. So now we're going to go into essentially what you can do once you have a document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use a 1920 by 1080, which is HD. You'll see up here it says document 1 and RGB. This is basically your color profile and what your document is. Over here on the properties, it says what size it is in centimeters, what the resolution is. On here, if you press file, you can do another new document, just the same. They'll pop up with this, or you can do open, which will open the document. And if you see, this is from another video. You've got your thumb, which is a PSD format. You've got PNGs and JPEGs, which are your image files, and you can open those, and they all work a bit differently. It's hard to explain exactly how, but essentially PNGs, I prefer to save in PNGs, especially for internet work. JPEGs are a bit more, they lose a bit of quality when they're saved. They lose a tiny bit of detail or a bit of color, or a few pixels get substituted for the nearest pixel. It's hard to explain, but it's just there. That's all you need to know, it's just there. Use PNG or JPEG, whatever you prefer. I personally use PNG. There's also GIF, I would not use that. I just leave that for now, it's too complicated. But if you want to know more, feel free to ask in the comment section, I'll explain it to you. Or just Google it and it'll explain it to you pretty briefly there. Now, you've also got Browsing Bridge. That's essentially, you can browse for documents in your Adobe Bridge. If you bought the whole kit, you can save documents to there. It's like a cloud, and you can download them from there. You can open images as a smart object. That's so you can do smart filters and do all sorts of interesting things. Opening recent, so that's your recent list. You can clear that as well by just doing that. Down here, close, that just closes your document. Close all closes all documents. Close all and go to bridge. It's essentially self-explanatory. Now save you can't use until you've saved as. You can save as, like I said, all these different file types. So you got all the different JPEG formats. I use that one there. You can save as Photoshop. I use the top one there. Bitmap, that's for specific things like if you're doing game design and things like that. That's icons and things like that. I wouldn't use RAW. That's for like camera and stuff, and for editing elsewhere. PNG is what I use. Don't use any of these other ones. Sometimes you'll find something's in a TIFF file. Don't save in that. You don't need to. Exporting is what I use to export out of the kind of program. So that's how I export my PNGs. I export like this, and I essentially just choose the format PNG. You got all these different formats, transparency on, and then you just press export all, and you can basically do it from there. There's not much more you need to know there. Save for web's quite useful if you're just using web work. You don't need to really think about this too much. Path to Illustrator just changes it. It just takes it to Illustrator. Generate, you don't need to use that. Share on Behance, that's the Adobe's Behance, and that's basically where you can put work on, and you can share it straight from your Photoshop essentially. Search Adobe stock, this is like you can find stock images and things like that, you know, typefaces, all sorts like that. Automate, don't worry about these things either. Scripts, I wouldn't use scripts either. I haven't used them in my whole time of using Photoshop in 5 years. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Don't think about it. Import, don't really think about that. Video frames for delays is quite useful for the video editing, but that's about as far as you need to go. File info, so that's info about your file. That's essentially got all the data on here of different things. So what you can do is you can, you know, say who created the document, you know what it is, and that'll stay with the document. So if you're working on something and you want to copyright it, you can, you know, say, you know, so I could put Ben Lewis. I am the author of the document essentially. They could check that, and you can save that as a PNG. You can save the document as yours, and that means that it's yours. And if it does get, you know, used when you've copyrighted it, people can use that to have a look and see, is it yours? And if it is, you know, you've got rights to it. Print, obviously, that's simple as. I wouldn't suggest using print in Photoshop. It's very slow. It hurts your computer and hurts your printer a lot. So I would say leave that be. just basically export it first and then print. Same with print as one copy, that's self-explanatory. Now that's basically all the interface, that's all coming into the program. That's all I'm going to show you today. I'll show you selection and moving tools, which are these first 4 or 5 tools, and I'll show you those in the next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If this was useful, please give the video a thumbs up and comment down below what you think. Let me know if I missed anything. Just share this with your friends if they want to get into graphic design, and I'll see you in the next video.